Get ready to rise above the noise and unlock your true potential. Welcome to Unapologetic Uplift, the podcast that's all about keeping it real and helping you live your best life.
I'm Kim Staples, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my beautiful co-host, Ianthe Mauro, on this journey of unapologetic growth and transformation.
Together, we share unfiltered thoughts, practical strategies, and advice on manifesting without the fluff, encouraging you to prioritize self-care physically, emotionally, and energetically so you can make things happen without making yourself sick.
In a world that often tells you to dim your light, we're here to help you shine brighter than ever and be seen in your best light. Join us as we dive into the art and science of living unapologetically and reaching your full potential.
Buckle up. Get ready to learn, grow, and evolve with us on Unapologetic Uplift. New episodes released weekly.
Welcome to Unapologetic Uplift. I'm your host, Kim Staples, joined by my beautiful co-host, Ianthe Mauro. And today we are discussing a very critical topic, which is the spiritual ego, how your spiritual ambition and desire to help other people can sometimes actually be harmful.
And as we love to do here, we start with an affirmation on a candle. So I'm going to light a candle with the affirmation, and you're welcome to do this along with us or later. I would like this affirmation to be that we listen with our whole heart, allowing humility to rise above self-righteousness. Woo, let's go.
And so it is. What a beautiful intention. So what is the spiritual ego? Let's start off by defining it for anybody that doesn't understand or has never heard this term before. Spiritual ego is when an individual on their spiritual path develops an inflated sense of self, an inflated ego, the sense of superiority, and like they are above other people.
Oh, that's familiar. Not only, I'm thinking right away, and I wonder if anyone else is who's listening, but I'm thinking right away of when I've actually done that. I'm calling myself out first because there have been times in my life where I go, oh, I just get this sense that, and it's so yucky when I realize what I'm doing. And it actually relates to the last episode about masks because it becomes like a mask. I'm going to put on I'm on a spiritual journey mask now. And everything is going through this filter of, I'm going to make it sound like I'm an authority in this space and using certain words that people relate to that everybody's using, which, okay, I apologize if you're using words that you hear everybody using because they work for you, great. But then there is a level of authenticity there. But what I'm referring to is picking and choosing words that you've heard others say because it gives you this sound of spiritual authority or authority in general. And that's where I'm calling myself out. As in the past, I've done that. I really hope that I stop doing that I've stopped it. I really hope. And if you find it, Kim, you have full authority to call me out because it's so cringe to me when we put, like what I said in the intention I set, when we put our humility below self-righteousness, we get self-righteous. When we have an agenda about, I have to tell you what it is and what it, because I'm further on the journey and even qualifying a journey as behind or further or above or below, to me, that's the slippery slope of starting down this path of the ego, getting in the way of the truth, getting in the way of responding in the moment and being open to receiving what's in front of us.
Yeah. What happens is the spiritual journey becomes a journey to stroke your ego and boost yourself up rather than for self-development and to become a better person. So what are the key characteristics? I actually looked some up to that we could just list for people. And those characteristics include grandiosity. So basically, like, I am the chosen one. Self-righteousness, of course, which is when we are believing that my beliefs are superior and anybody else that doesn't agree is less than. Judgment, of course. So condemning those that aren't on a spiritual journey that is similar to ourselves and then making them wrong for it. Spiritual materialism. So this is using different spiritual practices or things that you've experienced to make yourself look superior, to gain fame or attention or validation. And then the superiority complex, which really is more like the God complex, where you're viewing yourself as enlightened and above others. Like you're up here looking down on these peasants. So yeah, let's just keep those in mind as we talk about some of our own experiences today, because both Ianthe and I have experienced this in other people. And like Ianthe mentioned, we've noticed things in ourselves too. So we are all at risk of falling into the spiritual ego on our spiritual journey if we don't be careful and practice humility and self-awareness.
Yeah, I want to add that it's so much came up. And of course, for all of you that are just getting to know us, hi, I like to write as I'm listening because things will come to me. So when I'm looking down, I want you to know that with my whole heart, I am present. And these things that come through me, I don't want to stop them. And so I look down and I do this. And I think you can sometimes even see reflections in my glasses of things that I'm writing. And then you'll get a little preview of what's coming up. The things that I just wrote down is I wrote the word should. And I put it in quotes. And I want to share with you something that happened to me. It was about 10 years ago. I was talking to a friend and she was very upset. She was having a lot going on with her child at the time. And she was coming to me for advice and support. And I said, you should blah, 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 blah. And she said, I really am very uncomfortable that you told me I should. And my first response was, what a jerk. Like, you come to me for advice and then I say should and you don't want it and you're throwing it away. Maybe you just don't want to hear what I have to say. And I got very defensive. I got super defensive. How dare she? In my mind, it's always a red flag for me if I get defensive and I see it and I'm immediately, making the other person wrong and trying to figure out how I can prove that she's wrong. That is not, like, for me, I don't know, we're using words high, low, but it's not a high vibrating place for me to be, and it feels yucky. And it can really disrupt communication because I'm no longer listening. Now I'm looking for reasons to make her wrong. I'm looking for reasons why I'm right. And this is back to the self-righteousness piece. So here's what I learned. The word should, she was right. Really hated to admit it for a very long time, but I've thanked her since. I actually circled back and thanked her several years later. It did not happen to me overnight that I said, because I didn't like to be told not to say should. I thought, what a nitpick. Why don't you look at the point I'm making here and not nitpick the words I'm using? I'm so tired of that. But that actually, she was right in the end, because how we are relating to other people, it's important to consider the way that we're speaking to them. And if we do use the word should, it is self-righteous. It is saying there's no room here for your opinion because I'm telling you what you should do. And there's a funny saying where you say, stop shoulding all over yourself, because we often do it to ourselves more than others. Well, we will easily, I can stop saying it to others, but it took me many years to be able to stop saying it to myself, where I would say, oh, Ianthe, you should have done this. You should have returned this call sooner. You should have had better quality internet for this, podcast. Should, right? I think that it was a blessing for her to say that to me and to have it affect me that way. And so I wrote that down here because I know you can tell how it fits in. This is one of those moments where we can catch ourselves. And if it's as simple as, if what you get from this podcast is a simple, just turn of phrase, change of looking at how we're using language and our intentions, I guarantee you it's going to take you to a place where you're going to get to be more and more authentic and true in whatever your spiritual path is. Your spirituality is going to ring so much truer to other people when we're willing to look at where are we self-righteous and where are we allowing humility?
Yeah, totally. That makes me think that I often say how I'm really grateful to have been on the receiving end of experiencing the spiritual ego earlier on in my spiritual journey, because it really caused humility to become one of my core values, because I felt that I was hurt by it and I saw other people be hurt by it. And I was like, I never, ever, ever want to make somebody else feel like that. And, I wonder, like, if that hadn't happened, because I can look back and see, and I'm still human, right? There are times that come up where I judge other people and, I have to be self-aware and remind myself. And I feel like if that didn't happen, who knows, right? Like humility probably wouldn't have become a core value of mine, not at that point anyway. So it just goes to show that everything truly does happen for a reason.
And I want to mention, when we're talking about humility, we love to define terms. I want you to know that you can be in the energy of humility, which says to me, we are open to criticism. We're open to not being right. We're open to what's the stimulus that's in front of us and being able to respond in the best way we possibly can in the moment, knowing that we don't have every single answer and all the tools yet. Hopefully, I hope for all of you and me that we never have all the tools, that we're always going to be open to finding something new that will help us improve and be our highest and best. I want to also add that we are many, many, many parts. And I bring this up a lot. You can be humble and still grateful and owning the beautiful, brilliant, capable parts of yourself and celebrating those. So humility isn't the same as, "Oh, it's okay. I'm just going to be over here." That's not actually humility. That's self-deprecation. And
Yeah.
you could come at me for that, but that's how I feel. It's,
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciate you noting that difference, because as we're evolving and growing spiritually, growing at all, we can confuse these things. We can really adopt an all or nothing attitude where it's like, okay, I'm going to be humble. And that means that I don't, celebrate any of my wins and I don't talk about any of the wonderful things about myself. And yeah, I think that couldn't be further from the truth, because I encourage everybody to celebrate themselves and share their wins. And I think that that's something that as humans, we need to do a whole lot more of.
Okay, and I'm going to add something here. I think that a big difference here, the way that you can celebrate something and still be humble, is that in celebrating it, you're not including, "I made this happen. There's no reason besides me. I am all powerful." That goes back to that grandiosity ego, right? But if instead you're saying, "Wow, this happened for me and this happened to me, and I am so excited and I'm celebrating it, and I'm aware that it was all of these beautiful things happening in my favor at this time and a result of the hard work and actions that I've taken," that is a beautiful way to celebrate and still have humility.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So why don't we talk a little bit about some of the ways that we have experienced the spiritual ego?
Please do tell.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I was really affected by somebody that I looked up to, had become a good friend on my spiritual journey, and she was holding space for me to help me along the way. And she was a very, very gifted, talented person. She fell into the spiritual ego. She started to, and this is the thing, right? And why we have to be so self-aware and intentionally practice humility as a helper of any kind, healer, a coach, a mentor. When you help somebody win or overcome something, it is such an amazing feeling. It feels so good. And we want to tell everybody, like, you want to share this great news, and that's okay. But when we're not practicing the humility and remaining self-aware, it can inflate the ego. And we can develop this sense of, I am the almighty healer. And, it's just something we need to be aware of. And I have witnessed this happen to somebody that I looked up to and thought was really amazing. And I mean, I still do think she's amazing, but we've had to part ways. Now, how this happened, it started happening really subtly. Like, it wasn't just an overnight thing that happened. So the little things started happening, like her trying to tell me what I should be doing, and her starting to really judge a lot of people that she was supposed to be helping or that she was helping. Like, they weren't trying hard enough. They weren't putting in enough effort. And let's be real, as helpers, as coaches, as healers, we all have those moments of frustration where we feel like our clients could be putting in more. But again, it is our job to practice self-awareness and remain humble, right? All of these things can add up and take over if we're not careful. So I was seeing a lot of judgment in other people, and she started to warn me, oh, look out for this person. She's not really truly on the journey. And at first I was like, oh, I trusted her, and I would take a step back and be like, I wonder what's up with that person. Like, that's interesting that she, like, all of a sudden is banishing them. She was banishing them. She started removing people from her community. And when she would warn me about people, if I didn't actually stop, like, back away from these people and stop talking to them, because, well, I appreciate somebody, giving me a heads up and warning me if I'm not seeing something. I still have a mind of my own, and I am going to take it with a grain of salt. Thank you for sharing that. I will, store that, keep it in a little area of my brain, but I'm not going to create this big bias against this person because they have never showed that side to me, and I need to figure things out for myself. So when I continued to have relationships with people, she would start making me wrong for it and started to shun me and push me out. The exact things that she was supposed to be helping people with is what she was judging them for. As a healer, we're here to hold space and help people work through hard times. And when people would come to her with a problem, it was like, I can't believe that they can't figure this out. And it's like, it's not very helper like of you. And yeah, that's where it started. It just progressed to the point where she really did have this superiority complex, and she would talk about how people weren't on the same level as her and she was above them. And it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And eventually our relationship had to end. I got shunned right before I was actually going to leave. So
Wow. Well, there was a lot in there, Kim. And first of all, I really want to acknowledge you for how self-aware you are and how you're able to, it sounds like, not take it personally, because I think a lot of people, myself included, could take that situation very personally, especially because you mentioned it's someone you really trusted and looked up to. This is a couple of things come up for me from this story. One is rejection is God's protection. That's one of my favorite. I borrow it from a 12-step program. It's not actually mine. Authentically, I did not come up with it, but it's helped me so many times. And, I go further into that. So rejection is God's protection. So if I look at what that really means, it means that I can instantly go from the ouch of the rejection to the gratitude of I'm being somehow protected from being in relationship with this person who isn't for me and who's not helping me and not serving the same things that I am, or not in alignment. And so thank you. And as soon as I switch into gratitude, of course it helps. But the story you told, I can totally relate. And I also feel like those are the people that end up, unbeknownst to them, showing up as our greatest teachers. Because, right?
it really was protection, because when, like, I can remember feeling like, do I end this relationship? Do I stay in this relationship? Like, I knew what was happening, and I kept hoping that she would become aware of it and didn't know if there was a way for me to approach it. And I got this feeling that if I did that, it would just cause problems. And it did really hurt. There were moments where it felt personal, and I really had to remind myself that it wasn't. But when I got out of that relationship, the freedom that I felt, because it was constantly like having this little thing on my shoulder. She was watching everything I did, the way that I would show up online, and constantly asking me questions about this or that. We were in similar lines of work, and she didn't like that. So there was almost this competitive feel to it. And I didn't feel like I could really be myself, knowing that she was constantly watching. So when I was released from that relationship, I went ahead and blocked her on all of social media platforms so that I didn't have that feeling anymore of like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to say when I post this or do this. It was a really unhealthy dynamic, and it often takes us being removed from those situations to be able to see it. I have helped people in toxic relationships, and while I was aware of it, I was still gaslighting myself because I did care about her, and I was like, oh no, she'll figure it out and like come to, because I've seen her be vulnerable and take personal accountability in the past, and show this is it's going to get better. Even as somebody that has helped people through this time and time again, I'm human, and it was just so freeing to get out of that.
And I also love that you didn't, if you notice everyone, that what Kim didn't do is get vindictive, try to do something back, try to match the behavior. And the blocking is really great because energetically you can block, right? Like that's in a spiritual way, we can say, I'm putting this beautiful, surrounding myself in light. I'm imagining this protection. I'm not going to, but the reality is they're looking and lurking. That can get into your head. So what's great is there's no judgment in creating that boundary of blocking. It's not judgmental. It's just, this isn't working for me. And you're not wishing harm on the other person or vindictive. You're protecting your space.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I did do, cord cutting ritual.
Well, yes. Do
I
tell what that is. You can't just throw that out there, cord cutting ritual, and not say something. That's not going to just go. Let's go. What is that? What is a cord cutting ritual, Kim?
Ritual where we cut energetic cords from attachments that we have. So oftentimes when we end a relationship, there's still an energetic cord that needs to be severed so that we can release it, let it go, and heal. Like it hurt, and I did have to heal from it. But I don't take it personal, and I hope that she does become aware of it and take self-responsibility and change those behaviors, because it's really harmful. And while I look at myself as somebody that it sucked, it hurt, I hated it, but I had the skills to be able to cope with it. I have the tools in my toolbox. I know there are a lot of vulnerable people that didn't necessarily have those tools who received the same treatment. And it really, really breaks my heart because there's so much harm that can be done.
It's true. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about something going on, maybe you're in the middle of this. Maybe there's someone doing this to you who's not asking you questions, not curious about how things are for you, but telling you the way they see it. Like telling you, I see you too much on social media. That cannot be good for your energy. You're going to burn out. What? Who asked you? What? Did you actually ask me? What if I have a VA that you don't know about, virtual assistant, that's doing all my social media posts and I'm actually sitting back here under a tree? How can you make that assumption? So if you notice that you're around people who are, especially from a place of moral authority and spirituality, telling you, I see this for you, and I see, please know that we're here for you. Kim and I are going to help you in that we've been through it, and we will remind you that you're right to feel uncomfortable with that. If somebody's telling you something and it's back to the gut and the intuition, which is always, this is the way that we hear. And I will say, you can put any word in here that you want, but I'm going to say, if you want to hear God, it's your intuition. You can change that word to whatever you need, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Your intuition is right. So please, if it feels weird, and maybe you do really respect this person and you look up to this person and you want them to help you and you want them to tell you what to do in a certain way. But if it goes to a place where you're going, ouch, and I feel yucky and now I feel watched or I feel judged, please, please honor that in yourself. Because the times that I haven't honored that and I abandon myself because I think, oh, I've put them higher than me and I've put them in this moral authority place. And I think, oh my gosh, okay, I better change my habits because they're saying that it looks like I'm headed for disaster and burnout. But I was feeling fine. Now all of a sudden I don't. It's not because of what I was doing. It's because of what they said. You see, start to question even for yourself. Where is this coming from? Do they have a point? You can look at do you have a part in it? I love asking, what's my part in it? Love that question. But oftentimes if it comes up that when you ask yourself, what's my part in it? And what comes up is truly has nothing to do with what that person in the authority is telling you. You're right. They're not. So
yeah, nobody knows you like you know you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not the helper's job to tell you what to do ever.
And especially not without your permission. When people say, like my friend pointed out when I said, you should do this, and she did come to me for advice. However, I think even when people tell you they want advice, I think it's a really good practice in order to keep in that not being self-righteous and the humility is to be able to say, would would you like my take on that? And they can, and allow them to say no. If they say no, don't go, but I know what you need to do. No, if they say no. So here's the other thing I've learned. If we ask a question, and I learned this from toddlers, if you ask your toddler, do you want, and you give them 3 choices, you better already be okay with all 3 choices, because if they choose one of those that you gave them, you can't then say, no, not that one. That doesn't work. Then you're going to have a massive fit. And also you're a liar now, because you've offered them 3 choices and now you're taking them away. Same thing in this way. If you pose a question, you have to be okay if the answer is no, and just hold it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me personally, I will try and use my own personal example of something similar I've been through, or I'll say something like, do you mind if I tell you what I have done in similar circumstances? Or do you mind if I tell you what I might do, rather than, I tell you what you should do? It's just like, don't tell them, just, and also maybe ask them some questions to help them self-reflect, rather than giving them what you think the answer is. Because as helpers, as coaches and healers and helpers of all kinds, we often feel like we do see the solution to people's problems, but it isn't helpful for us to just say, this is what you need to do, this is the solution to your problem. We have to help them discover the solution for themselves. And it then helps them feel so empowered rather than disempowered when we're like, this is what you need to do.
Also, we have to be open to the idea that we could be wrong with what we're seeing. So if we're the one that's seeing something, right? I'm going to use the same example. You've been on social media too much. I think it's going to burn you out. It's too much. It's way too much. No one person can be posting that much and be on all these platforms. It's just ridiculous. You need to look at that. Okay. Instead, let's go back in time. Let's pretend instead that person who was at the time in a place of somewhat authority to me, someone I looked up to, what if instead they said to me, what's your relationship like to social media? How do you feel when you show up on social media? And how do you manage showing up on social media? Because I notice you're there a lot. My So my response would have been, because that doesn't have assumptions in it, it's seriously asking, I really want to know, and that's humility. So my response would have been, by the way, for everybody, I would like to answer that, and I wish I would have been asked. My response was, at the time, I was still healing from the loss of my father. I was finding and isolated because I'd moved across the country and wasn't in close proximity geographically to anybody that I could hug and that I love, except my husband and my animal. For me at the time, being everywhere I could be on all the platforms, whenever I felt like it, without a set schedule, but when I felt like it felt so good to me, and it was giving me so much back. And it was making me feel real again and like I was relevant in the world at a time when I really needed it. So for me, it was doing the opposite of burnout. And if I had said, uh-oh, it looks like I'm on too much, I look like I'm doing too much, that's what she said, so I better stop, I would have been depressed. I would have fallen into patterns that were not healthy. So it was exactly the opposite of her assumption, but she never asked. So there you go.
Yeah, and I remember seeing how energizing that was for you.
Yeah. And recently I'm less on social, much less. I'm probably 50% less than I was at that time. And not because I was burning out, and not because somebody told me, but because I am at a point in my life where I actually pay attention to what gives me energy, what nourishes me, my whole system, and what pulls it and robs it and takes it away. And so because I'm paying attention to that, I go when I feel like it's nourishing, and I leave when it's not. And right now that looks like, from the outside, probably 50% less engagement than I had about 2 years ago. But I still feel the same good, from it.
Cool. So let's talk about recognizing the signs of the spiritual ego and how to overcome it. We want to bring awareness for the people that are at the receiving end of this, that think that they might be experiencing this from somebody else. But we also want to bring this awareness for people that might be stuck in the spiritual ego, because we are all vulnerable humans, and this is something that any one of us could fall into.
Okay, so I wrote down, when you said that, immediately the word faith popped into my head. This is a word that for me can be problematic, and this could be controversial, and this might be, it might be for you, and I'm happy to receive DMs if you want to go into this any further, but here are my thoughts on this and why I put the word down. Faith can easily become an excuse to control others and to tell them what to do, because you can't prove faith. Faith is faith for a reason. There's no physical proof, otherwise it wouldn't require faith. So the issue here is that it can so easily be used in a way by people who just want to exercise control. And that's what came up for me. So tell me what you think about that, Kim.
Yeah, I agree. It can put people in a vulnerable position. I mean, not that I'm telling people not to have faith, of course. I hold faith and have faith, and I think everybody should. But again, that awareness, right? When we are in these situations where we have a spiritual mentor, a coach, a healer that we're working with, it's very normal to look up to these people. We have to trust them. So it does put us in a vulnerable situation. Be aware, trust your gut, and listen to your intuition, like Ianthe previously said, because your intuition will never steer you wrong.
And what's beautiful about faith is in that you said, and you used the word should, but I'm not calling you out for it, but it's funny because I think it fits here. I'm going to tell you why. We can say something and nothing is a hard and fast rule. So I love bringing this up as an example, and not meaning to call you out, but to show how it actually, to me, makes sense in this regard. We should all have faith. That's not a bad should. The reason that I love that and that statement works for me with the word should is that without faith, what do we have? We have, we have to now what? Prove absolutely everything. How is that possible? That leaves no room for miracles. It leaves no room for connecting dots that we can't see, and in the strong intuitive takes that we have and that we get. So I love that. And faith is so beautiful in that way because it allows us to have a suspension of disbelief without needing to prove everything, because we're back to our intuition, our knowing, and the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the way that it's showing up. So if you need proof for something and you really feel like I need proof, go to your body. How do you feel? Are you feeling relief? Are you feeling dread? Are you feeling joy? Are you feeling light? Are you feeling heavy? Are you feeling fear? Those are going to be your signs, and you'll be able to have faith by just checking in with your body. And I want to throw it to you because you are the absolute queen of being aware in your body and somatic experiencing and somatic healing through specifically tapping. I want to throw this back to you, Kim, but that's for me where I can be in faith is when I also, the evidence is in how I check in.
Yeah, absolutely. Our body tells us so much, and being able to tap into that. So, stay grounded. Think of some ways to get out of your head and physically feel into your body. I love a good guided meditation where the guide will say, feel into your right toe, right pinky toe, feel into the next toe, feel into the next foot and the next toes. And so slowly move up the body, or slowly, start at the head and slowly move down, because it really offers us the opportunity to feel into our body. Breathe, connect to your breath. The breath is such a powerful way to tap in and connect. And when we're able to do that, we can ask ourselves, how do I feel? How does this make me feel? What do I feel about this current situation? And just listen and pay attention to how your body reacts. It tells you so much. And the more you do this, the easier it gets, the better you get at it. Before you know it, you are an intuitive ninja and can just tap in and figure out most things.
Intuitive Ninja TM. That is hilarious. I love that. And so I'm going to pause here to tell everybody something, whether Kim wants me to or not. I need you all to be aware that Kim has an unbelievable membership. I'm actually in it. And 5 mornings a week. Can you imagine you're in her energy for 15 minutes to set up your day with tapping, with a little breath work and tapping? I thought I didn't need it. I actually thought, I'm doing this. I'm going to be in her membership because I love her and I want to bring other people in. So I will join and I will be an example to others, right? I don't really need it. I'm just doing it because I love my friend. And I got in there, and the changes and shifts that have happened for me personally after doing this every single morning, 5 days a week, not Saturday and Sunday, but every five days a week, it is incomprehensible. I can't actually qualify all of the shifts and changes, but thank you, Kim. And it's very affordable. It's a monthly membership without a long-term contract. And I'm just saying this because if you're listening and thinking, I love this podcast, I like just being with you and your energy, but how could I even be in it more? That's the way.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. It is an honor to serve all of the queens that are in the Divine Activation membership. And it is something that lights my soul on fire.
And right now, I know there are men listening. Right now, this is women only. And it's not because we don't love, honor, and appreciate men. We really, really do. This is something I'm not going to tell you, like make it my words, but it's that's a decision that Kim has made for now. I know that she does one-on-one work as well. So if you are listening and you're thinking, gosh, I wish I could be in it, but I'm a man, I'm going to, she does offer a free, I mean, I'm making this now a commercial about Kim and I don't care. I'm doing it unapologetically because you need to hear this. And I don't like to bury the lead and actually make it so that it's impossible for you to know that this exists and it's there for you if this is for you. So if you are a man listening, she does a free call. It's like called a discovery call, right? Where you can see if it's a good fit and there's something she can do to help you. So highly recommend that.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Yes, and I am going to be starting a new mentorship program in the new year that I am going to keep open to men and women.
Wow, that's exciting. I didn't even know that. That's so cool. Thank you.
Do reach out if you feel called to connect. And recognizing the spiritual ego, things we want to look out for are grandiosity and superiority. When people think that they are all high and mighty and above us, or if you feel like you are all high and mighty and above others, it's time to practice humility and practice self-awareness. If you see somebody with a lack of accountability and a lack of humility, that is a red flag. I also want to emphasize doing things for personal gain and fame. You can tell if somebody is can often tell if somebody is just doing it to, collect people and collect fame. Things that we can do to overcome and prevent the spiritual ego, because again, we are all vulnerable humans that are susceptible to this. First, we need to cultivate self-awareness. This is something we all should be doing all the time as somebody that could potentially be on the receiving end or somebody that is a helper. Practice humility, embrace vulnerability. None of us are perfect. And when I see somebody acting like they know it all and they are above, they are the expert and they just are never vulnerable, never vulnerably sharing from their own experiences. For example, and I don't want this to come across as that I'm superior, but in my member Divine Activation, in real time, I share in the community things that are coming up in my own life, challenges I'm having in my relationship, in my parenting, with my own ego. And I do this so that people can learn from my experience. And because I want people to see that I am just like them. I am not above them. I am no different. We are all the same. We are all one.
I love that. I want to add something there. There's this trend I've noticed, and it's that I don't know where it comes from, but I've noticed there's this thing of if you tell a story after I've shared something that I do, that I've gone through or I'm going through, and then you share a story that's similar, it means you're somehow taking away from my experience and you're making it about you. I disagree. It can be that. But what you just described was instead a way to relate as human to human, heart to heart, to say, not that my experience is at all the same and I don't understand yours because I'm not you. I get that. However, it reminds me, and I'm connecting dots, it reminds me of something that I've experienced, and therefore we can bond over the fact that we have both shared something that feels like it could be similar and there's a similarity there. And I find that to be beautiful and very helpful. So when you share, Kim, for instance, if I share something that's going on with me and then you say, wow, yeah, I've been through that. I can't imagine what it is like for you. But when I went through it, this is what it was like. I love that. I don't immediately think, she's saying. And then on the flip side, there are people that want to just up like, well, my trauma is worse than yours and I've had it worse than you. And here's, I'm going to one up you on my trauma. That's different. And you know what? Your body is going to know the difference because you're either going to feel supported and met where you are heard. It's about listening, really. Or you're going to feel like, here we go again. And now I just have to be open to hearing her story. She didn't hear me. That's really the difference. Because if you're really listening and then you see, and I have something similar and you feel called to share it, that can help the other person feel closer to you and heard.
Yeah. Which leads to the next thing, foster empathy and compassion. And what that means is trying to understand people and where they're coming, trying to put in the position of the other person. How would I feel if I were in this situation and somebody said this to me and responded this way, right? Like it changes the way that you see things when you start doing that, for sure. And letting go of attachments and expectations. When we have expectations of others and attachments to outcome, it can really, really negatively affect us and the way that we treat other people.
Oh, that's so true. And you know what? It's funny. I don't want to self-edit. So I'm just going to say what popped into my mind when you said that because it must be relevant. I remember going with my son to a therapist. It was just after our divorce. He was 11 years old. It had been a little time after the divorce, but we noticed that my son was in a weird slump of, it seemed like going into a depression, and it didn't seem like his personality. And I was concerned. 11 years old, by the way, I've noticed a very hard time in our chemistry. So in general, if you are parenting an 11-year-old right now, I am wrapping my virtual arms around you so hard and seeing you, moms and dads, really, truly.
Yeah,
It's hardcore. But here's the thing that popped into my head, what I remembered, and I think I have some work to do around this. I probably will have to tap on this. This psychiatrist said, I said something like, I was upset about something, and he said, so why are you feeling like that? And I said, it's a mom thing. I said flippantly. And he looked at me with a ton of judgment and he said, that's bullshit. I don't even know what you're talking about. That's meaningless. What is a mom thing? What are you talking about? And I was feeling so attacked that I burst into tears. And my son is right there. And I was really attacked. I mean, his voice and his face was like, you idiot. And I started crying. And I said, I don't know. And he said, those are stereotypes. And whenever you use a stereotype, you're not really in the room. So why did that come up just now with what you said? Help me here in real time in front of everybody. Why did I go to that memory?
Well, first, this is an example of helpers being more harmful than helpful. And okay, so what were we talking about right before that?
I think it was expectations. There was something around expectations. I don't know, but I flashed on that moment. Maybe it's because I had an expectation when you go into a therapy session and you with somebody who's supposed to be helping you, that you're allowed to be you. And if you say something wrong, you're not going to get in trouble. And I somehow had and I didn't really have I was very vulnerable. And so it's not really about expectations. It's about just back to what this whole thing is about, that when you go to somebody for help, and I do believe that when you go to someone for healing, and healing can include the art of psychology, and there's a reason I called it an art, and the science, and people can come at me for that, and that's going to be on another episode. But I was actually at a psychiatrist, not even so that is a medical doctor. I had this assumption that I would be safe, and I was attacked.
Yeah, this was a perfect example. And I'm not surprised that it came through. We can definitely dig deeper into this, whether or not it's just everything we've been talking about, or if there's something with the expectation, like his expectations of you to not be, living up to a stereotype or stereotypes or whatever, right? We'll definitely dig into that. But this is just like literally the perfect example of what can happen to us in these moments of vulnerability when we're going to somebody for help and it actually cause more harm than anything else.
And you know what I remember from that story too, which is so endearing. And I'm going to have to, if my son doesn't listen to this, he's now a grown up person, well into his 20s. I will have to remind him this. But when I looked over at him, because of course my mama energy, I'm concerned now how he's responding because I'm crying now. And I look over and he's like this. He was asleep. He was so asleep. It was like he was protected from any of it. He fell asleep. This guy did not relate to him at all. He did not relate to this guy. And he just checked right out.
I love that. I love that.
It's like, thank you, son.
Yeah, good. Yeah, the only other thing I would say is stay grounded, practice gratitude and self-acceptance. We all are susceptible to this on being on the receiving end and the giving end. So, just accept it for what it is and take like that radical self-responsibility. And really, if you are a helper, even if you're not a helper, because we're all helpers in one way or another, focus on service and giving.
Yes, yes. And notice in your body, if it doesn't feel good, it's not good for you.
Yeah. Totally. If you do these things consistently, it will prevent you from falling into the spiritual ego. If you are in the spiritual ego, doing these things will help you come back to us. And I think it's a great time for us to wrap up. Thank you so, so much, Ianthe, for partnering with me and being here to have these amazing chats. Thank you to everybody listening. Please do leave us a review. We are so open to feedback. If there's anything you want to hear us talk about, somebody would love to see us interview, please do let us know. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you don't miss a beat. We love you so much.
I'm adding something here in case you can. If it breaks off, fine. We are so excited to announce that we have our very first guest. So if you're hearing this right now, the next episode you're going to hear is going to be with a voice that I guarantee you is going to bring so much high vibration love to your day or night whenever you listen to it. And we cannot wait to hold space for this person. So thank you so much and look forward to sharing that with you. And I want to thank you too. There have been several people who have reached out to me personally and to Kim personally to say how much this podcast has already meant to you. I can't tell you how much that means to us. So if you do feel like you want to share something with us, please, our DMs are always open for that. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on Unapologetic Uplift. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share the love and tell a friend about us, and give us a review.
Please don't miss a thing. Subscribe to this podcast and explore our sponsors, Objects with Purpose, Eco Luxury Candles, and Divine Activation membership.
Objects with Purpose is more than an eco-luxury candle brand. They are time travel devices in the form of a candle. Light the 3 wicks representing past, present, and future with the validation that you are exactly where you need to be. And if you're ready to raise your level of consciousness and step into your unapologetic, unfiltered, and unbothered era, join the Divine Activation membership at cuttingties.coach/queen. With 3 tiers to choose from, you'll find the perfect fit to support your transformation.
Thank you for your listening and love. We'll see you next Wednesday on Unapologetic Uplift.